I've got a couple stories from Ford today. This first story is a little bit crazy, crazier than you think, and people will say it's only 2,400 vehicles or something like that. But check this out. Ford recalls Super Duty pickups and they issue a do not drive warning for the brakes that can suddenly fail. Let's jump into this really quick. I'm going to show you something that is actually quite alarming about how these vehicles even got off the assembly line this way. And here in just a second, I'll actually show you what parts you can check if you do own one of these Super Duties. There's actually like 3 or 4 parts you can check. It's right in the recall. You don't have to waste your time and go into the dealership if you don't want to. Pretty quick check, but kind of crazy how they got here. So as of now, they say total number of potentially involved vehicles is 2,345. But as we all know with recalls, that usually expands later. Hopefully this one doesn't, and hopefully no one gets hurt. It does affect the F250, 350, and 450. Here's what they say actually happened. In the affected vehicles, brake pedal assemblies may have been assembled without a retention spring. Ford reviewed the assembly station camera images to determine the population of each affected part. So the description of the defect, certain vehicles may have been built without the retention spring that secures the brake booster push rod to the brake pedal, which can cause the brake booster push rod to separate from the brake pedal. As such, these vehicles fail to comply with the requirements of federal motor and safety standard guidelines. No kidding. Oh, you have to have brakes to comply? Wow, I didn't know that. And the description of the cause is the assembly plant operator may not have installed the retention spring on the brake pedal assembly, which secures the brake booster push rod to the pedal. And here's a nice image for you owners on how to check if you don't want to go to the dealer or you're too far away, you don't have time. It says to open the front left handle side door. Isn't that the front driver door? Anyway, locate the clip, retain spring, bushing, and washer. And you're basically going to make sure that all of these parts are there. So apparently during assembly, someone just forgot to put retention springs, or maybe they've got some, employee that's disgruntled that did this. This seems very odd that they don't have quality assurance this is a critical part of the car. Stopping is just as important as any other part, any of the airbags or safety systems. This is the most critical part. There's even been stories of at dealerships where they back these F-250s off of the trailer, and just to go park them at the dealer lots, they didn't have any brake power. Like, it was just disconnected right off the trailer, which is just crazy. I think this just goes to show that, whether it's GM, Ford, any of these companies, the lackadaisical attitude in quality assurance and engineering and everything else and just bean counting is just coming back to bite them. Every single week we see something ridiculous like this. It doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. In other sad Ford news, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a guy with a 2024 F-150. He is on his 3rd EcoBoost engine. Check this out.
Some scary moments there on an Ontario highway, a truck seen billowing smoke. It happened just months after the owner of that truck had the engine replaced for the 2nd time. That truck, by the way, bought just last year. Last fall, Speaker's Corner looked into several consumer complaints about Ford F-150 truck engine issues.
I leave the dealership, travel 5 kilometers down the road, and my engine fails again. Truck shakes violently.
That's Mark Mitchell, who we heard from in that last report after his turbo boost engine in his 2024 F-150 failed. Ford replaced the engine free of charge a few weeks after we spoke with him. Then, earlier this month,
My 2024 Ford F-150 suffered a violent mechanical failure, the 3rd major failure in less than a year.
This is video of the aftermath.
The vehicle began to shake uncontrollably, lost power, and released a massive cloud of white smoke that completely obscured the visibility of both directions on the highway.
Now, one interesting thing about this guy, he actually keeps driving, turns and videos the whole thing, and then complains about how it put other drivers in danger. And I'm just thinking, dude, you could have hit the hazards and pulled over if you were really that worried about other drivers and you and your son in the car. So part of that story seems a little bit like, come on, man. But he's under a lease, and Ford won't buy the truck back. So, yeah, overall, if this is like a 2.7, most of those 2.7s have been pretty reliable. For the amount of trucks that they sell, they've been pretty reliable. But one of our friends has, I think it's a 2020 Ford Expedition Max, and they just had the catalytic converter go out, and they're out of warranty. And it's like $3,000 to replace a catalytic converter in one of those things, the 3.5 Ecoboost. So yeah, man, new cars, expensive. They're not lasting as long as they should. And they're not being QC'd from the factory like everybody would expect. And think about this just for a moment. Just in June, Lincolns, they had 133 SUVs were recalled because they have back on the C-pillar trim, it can detach while you're driving. Ford Broncos got recalled for airbags potentially not being able to deploy. There were 2,200 Ford Broncos. You got the this new do not drive brake problem on the 250s, 350s, 450s. And then on June 20th, the Mach-E has a recall for transmission park rods where about 300 of these SUVs have risk of rolling away because of transmission problems. So I don't know if it's a physical problem or electronic. You just have to sit there and look at this and say, wow. And it just keeps going. And you look down, Ford recalls, on June 19th, Ford recalls 28,000 Ford Broncos for child safety lock failures. And then they recalled 304,000 Explorers and Lincoln Aviators on June 19th. It's a trend, folks. I don't care what anybody says. They've got a good one. Great. I'm glad you got a good new vehicle. But the trend is lack of quality assurance, lack of testing before things are put out, and bean counting in engineering to make parts that just don't last as long as they used to, and sometimes not to even last a couple of 100 miles. It's sad. That's the world we live in. And General Motors, they don't want to be outdone. They don't want Ford to take all the cake here in the headlines. So GM has to recall their 4500 HD, 5500 HD, 6500 HD after fires have occurred. So this actually just came out today, June 27th, 2025. 2019 through 2024, Silverados. They say you should park outside because your truck might start on fire. This was actually a recall back in 2023, but now they're doing a new recall because engineers have discovered a different root cause of the same problem that causes these to light on fire. 62,500 Chevy Silverado trucks are affected because the brake pressure sensor assembly may leak brake fluid into the brake pressure switches and cause shorts, which causes a fire. So park outside if you have one of these pieces of ignitable garbage. Anyway, that is going to do it, I think, for today. Boy, let me know what you guys think. Will we ever get back to reliable vehicles where the companies care less about profit and more about delivering something we actually enjoy? Till next time, thanks for watching.